Oh, sure. We're going to go through all three presentations first. After the third presentation, we'll open it up for a Q&A. And in addition, we also have Amy Weinreich, who's from NOCCA, who's an environmental attorney and works on many of these issues, and she'll be part of the panel discussion as well.
Thank you, Councilman Zone, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here to share a topic that I find very near and dear to my heart. So let's see then. Next slide.
There is a remote up there on the podium.
Oh, yeah.
And you can point it either at the screen or at the computer.
How about if I point at you? Okay. Thank you very much, Amy. I don't know why this isn't working. So anyway, as we get started with the audio-visual presentation, I wanted to tell you how I got interested in this line of work. I'm actually a native Clevelander, very happy to be back in the region, and for a short period of time I lived in Atlanta. And Atlanta, I was studying the health effects of high ozone season, because a lot of people use ozone chambers in animal studies and human studies to study the effects, but who needs an ozone chamber when you have Atlanta? So that's actually how I got interested in air pollution research. Thank you very much.
Forward, back.
Thank you. It needed to be slapped, huh? Okay, and so I'm happy to share some of that experience with you later if you would like. But through this presentation, which is meant to be short, I'd like to go over the components of air pollution that comprise the air quality index and share some of the data on the health associations with poor air quality, and then a little bit of a practical real-world study. So what is the air quality index? This is something that comes up when you hear the weather service or you read in the paper what's the AQI of the day. Well, what that is basically a diluted version of how bad is the air today or how good is the air today. And there are several pollutants that determine how good or bad the air quality is. And these 5 pollutants are called criteria pollutants. In other words, pollution, portions of pollution that the EPA is interested in controlling because of various reasons, including the health effects. And these include ground levels of ozone, particle pollution, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and nitrogen dioxide. And today we'll basically be concentrating only on those first 2, but to a certain degree we need to be aware that to a certain extent all of these pollutants are motor vehicle related. So what is ozone? When we were told don't use that hairspray, don't use that inhaler, you're going to deplete the ozone layer. Well, that's ozone in the stratosphere. That's good. That's what protects the Earth. But ozone in the atmosphere, in our immediate environment, is not so good. And how is ozone formed? Well, it's formed from various conditions, including heat and sunlight. And then you have to have combustible organic compounds, such as from petroleum and industrial sources, and they all mix together in the presence of heat and sunlight to form ozone, O3. And ozone is the seasonal pollutant. So you heard of high ozone season and low ozone season. So high ozone season is from May through September, and low ozone season is from December through February. And there's nothing like a natural experiment to drive a point home. In 1996, during the Atlanta Summer Olympics, there was a regional change in public transportation to accommodate, obviously, the Olympics. And so there was a decrease in automobile traffic in the region of the Olympics. And so because of that, or in association with that, there was a reduction in ground ozone levels by 23%. And then actually a friend of mine looked back at the Medicaid database and found that in association with that time, that there was a 44% decrease in claims for asthma in the Medicaid database. So remember what I said about the ozone chamber? We saw that that actually worked. And then the second pollutant that I'd like to discuss is particle matter or particulate matter pollution. And what is particulate matter? It's basically particles, small components in the air that can be airbound or settle as well, and it's formed from the breakdown of rocks, soil, and dust. And basically, the interesting part about particles is that it's categorized by size, but not really composition. And so composition is basically dependent on where it came from. Particle matter pollution is the component of air pollution that is most consistently associated with adverse health effects. And I say associated, you know, because you can't say cause, because these things happen and these things happen, and you have to say that there's an association. That's what epidemiologic research is. But what's interesting is that, for instance, in the Children's Health Study in California, they noted that with increasing levels of particle pollution and nitrogen dioxide, that there was a reduction in lung growth in children from the ages of 10 to 18 years old. Another more recent study, I believe in the last year or two, came out about cardiovascular events in women. So there were 65,000 women in this study over 8 years or something like that. And they looked and saw that there were 1,800 cardiovascular events. So basically, with higher PM 2.5 levels, there was a 24% increase in cardiovascular events and a 76% increase in the risk of death associated with those cardiovascular events. Now, these are large-scale studies that show this association. So who are the people at risk? Obviously, the people that we just talked about, children and women and even older adults. And why children? Because their lungs are still developing. Actually, your lungs grow till about the age of your mid-20s and early 30s, and then it's all downhill from there. And then children should be spending more time outdoors. And then more asthma and allergies in the children. And of course, older people have more chronic health problems, include cardiac disease and pulmonary diseases. And so that puts them at increased risk. What are the mechanisms that put people at risk during high ozone season? Well, the short answer, we don't exactly know, but studies, again, in ozone chambers have shown that people who are exposed to ozone and then exposed to something they're allergic to seem to have a more exuberant response to what they're allergic to. So that's basically an increased susceptibility to allergies. And then at high levels, it can be an irritant. And then also, children in summer camps have been studied that when they're outside during high ozone days, their lung functions are marginally reduced.